All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Lamed Zayin and Maseches Pesachim. So we left off the bottom line in Lamed Vav and Beis. We're going to be discussing bread, right? Bread. I've never baked in my life. I've seen it. Don't really understand how it works. I know there's starters and yeast and rising, but I don't know. All right. Anyway, let's see what's going on here. So perhaps I should bring my wife in one day to just do a presentation how it works. But anyways, Tana Rabbanan, bottom line on Lamed Vav Hamad Beis, Ein Oifin Pas Ava B'Pesach Divi Beis Shammai. So it says Beis Shammai, one cannot go ahead and bake Beis Ava, right? Thick bread. We'll see what that means on Pesach Divi Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Matir. Beis Hillel says Mutter. The Kama Bas Ava. So how much is Pas Ava? How much is this thick bread? Some Rav Huna, tefach, it's a tefach. Shechein matzin b'lechem apanim, tefach, because you find the lechem apanim that was every week that they used to go ahead and have on Shabbos, the shulchan, right? They would replace it every week. So that lechem apanim was up to a one tefach thick. So Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef has a kasha. What, you're going to let him do up to a tefach? See, Mamre b'zrizin, Yamru b'shein and zrizin, right? If they said by zrizin, right, those, the kohanim and the mikdash, there are a lot of people involved in the making of the lechem apanim, that they can do it up to a tefach, and we're not worried it's going to become chametz. So are we going to say that by people, by the hamonam, by everybody else? See, Mamre pasamila, Yamru pashein amila. If they said by pasamila that they used to constantly work and knead over and over extra chumros that they had in terms of the amount of kneading. I think to say it by regular bread being cooked on Pesach, that it's not going to go ahead and rise. Also, they used to go ahead and use the dry wood, very especially dried, aged wood in the mikdash. And therefore that heats up quicker, and there is no chametz. So you can say by people working in their homes with the wood not so hot, or that toner was constantly on, it's very hot. So you can say, or a person regular, he's baking his challah up to a tefach, it's not going to become chametz, right? Because it's not as hot. And that was of metal, or as much harder. You can say by cheres, by earthenware, which is not as hot. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba, so therefore we have nubshat. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba, Shelis es Rebbe b'yichud. I asked my Rebbe privately, Umanu, who was that? That was Rav, and that was Rav and Ikadam. Some others have a different version. Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba Amar Rav. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Rabba said the name of Rav. Shelis es Rebbe b'yichud. I asked my Rebbe privately, Umanu, who is that? Rabbeinu Hakadosh. That was Yehuda Levi. Rabbi Nasi, excuse me. So my pasava. What is pasava? Pas meruba means baking a lot of bread all at one time. V'mai curly pasava. Why is it called thick bread? Right? Because they have to do a lot of kneading. Since they're doing a lot of it, they're doing a lot of kneading, such as the way one would do with thick bread. Same way you can say ba'asra dahai tana la pas meruba pasava karva. Or some say you just stam in the place, right, where they used to go ahead and make a lot of bread, they used to call pasava. That's what it's called. In my time, what's the reason? Imishum. So now the question is, why would be usher? So imishum if you're saying you can't do a lot of breads, the breads you're making now are going to be not only for now, but even after Yontif. So my Erev Pesach. Why do you say you can't go ahead and bake abundance of these breads, these matzah on Pesach? We get some to use afterwards, right? Even on regular Yontif, even on Sukkot, even on Shavuos. So the verse says, "You're right." Over here, he was talking about the Yontif of Pesach. And Tana B'Halchasim learned Beis Shammai Yomrim Ein Oifin Pas Ava B'Yontif Ubeis Hillel Matira. Right, and so they have the favorites. Right, Beis Shammai says you can't go ahead and bake thick bread on Yontif. It doesn't say the Pesach on Yontif, so therefore Claire is talking about all Yontif. It's nothing to do with chametz or anything. It has to do with more of doing an extra tircha on Yontif for something which was after Yontif. Ubeis Hillel matir, and Beis Hillel says it's mutter, right? Because since it's you're baking it all together, perhaps it makes the bread better for Yontif. Therefore, you can do it now, even though some of it will be used after Yontif. Fine. Tana Rabbanan. Just before we move on, I see Josh walked in. I just want to wish Josh Ross a mazel tov on his most recent simcha, his son's bar mitzvah.
Mazel tov! Mazel tov! Mazel tov!
Thank you.
All right, we're sending the answer. I just wanted to Shemal stuff and Simchas to Josh and his family and to all, and for being
Put your video on, Josh. Put your video on, Josh.
Tanur Rabban. So now, we go on Tanur Rabbanan Yaitzin. Right, we are 4 lines down in the wide lines. Tanur Rabbanan Yaitzin v'pas Nakiya.
Stop it. Tanur Rabbanan.
Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, 4th wide line. Tanur Rabbanan. Perfect. Tanur Rabbanan Yaitzin v'pas Nakiya uvahadra uvasrikin hamutsiran b'Pesach. Right, a person can be Yaitzei his chiyuv on Pesach, his chiyuv matzah with pas Nakiya. Right, with clean flour, clean bread, uvahadra, right, and a harder bread, right, and the strikin mitzuyin, and also basically bread that's like been designed, that's been engraved, that's sort of made in different shapes on Pesach. And and even though we say normally you can't go ahead and do that on Pesach, right? You can't go ahead and make different shapes in your matzah, because if you go ahead and make different shapes in your matzah, it'll take a little longer to make the design. And by doing that, it might give the opportunity for it to rise and become chametz. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, davar zeh shal baitu spells and lechamim mipnei ma'amru mein eisen strikin amtzurim b'Pesach. This was asked by Baitus Ben Zon to the Chamim. He says, wow, how come one can't go ahead and make these special design matzahs in Pesach? Because a woman will take, whoever's making the bread, assuming a woman, right, will make the bread too long, and it will become chametz. I have an idea. So maybe I can get some the special cookie cutters, right, and go ahead and stamp it. Therefore, you have to shape it. You don't have to go ahead and shape it with your hand. It will take long and meticulous. Go ahead and get one of those gingerbread man cutters or whatever, and you stamp it, you cut it out, and each one is shaped, right? Keep it, and then you can do it all at once. So whether you can say everyone else is asked to do, but you are mutar, I can't do it. I can't make special exceptions. Therefore, we'll say everything is asr. And Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Sadok pamachas nichnasti achar Abel lebeis Rabban Gamliel. One time I went after to Abba, the base of Rabbi Gamliel. And they brought out to him like specially, designed matzahs. So Marti Abba isn't it a halacha you can't eat these on Pesach? So they said Bini lo shakol adam amru ela shanachtem amru. So he said no. They said no. They didn't talk about shal adam. Rather, only the ones of the bakers, because those might take longer. So the ones of the bakers, those are awesome, but the handmade ones, those are fine. And Ikadami, some of the different version, Hachi Kamarle is opposite. They didn't say the asr ones are from the bakery, Elishal Kol Adam, rather the ones from the regular people, because those people might take longer. The bakers are used to doing it, and therefore this bread, I guess that the decorated matzah that he was eating was ones from the baker. And Amar Rabbi Yosi, Aisin Srikin Kamin Rikikin, Vein Aisin Srikin Kamin Gluskos, right? When you go ahead and the design breads that were permitted, only the ones that were flat like wafers, and not ones that were thick like rolls. Fine. Tanur Rabbanan. So ha sufganin, right? Like sofu, like sponge bread, right? Va'adu shanim, and one's made from dvash, made from honey. The eskritin, and the eskritin are like wafers. The chalas hamisares, and one's made in a pan. The hamaduma, those are sort of different types of challah. Hamaduma is something which is basically truma and chula mixed together. It's a mixture, it's a suffix. All of these are petur min challah. Nothing to do with Pesach, has to do with the chiyuv of giving the hafrashas challah. So if these doughs or these breads are not considered to be challah. They're pater from challah. So my chalas hamasares. So what is this chalas hamasares? Right, the fourth one that was mentioned. So Rabbi Shuban Levi is a chalut shel bali batim. Right, this is basically bread that was burnt on top, scalded bread. This is the type of bread that it was. Now, Amar Reish Lakish, halu ma'asiyah fusein. The first four, right? The first four they're mentioning, I guess the reason why they're not good is because they were made in a pan, right? They were fried, and therefore they're pater from challah. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Maisa Ilfas Chayavin says, no, that's not true. If it's made in a frying pan, Maisa Ilfas, we're going to be discussing Maisa Ilfas today. If it's Maisa Ilfas, if it's done in a frying pan, then you're Chay B'Challah. But these are heated up; they're baked using the heat from the sun. Using the heat from the sun is pater from challah. Now, meis ve'aser kasha spoke about the vushin vas kritin. Asim bilfas chayavin b'cham pturim. If they're made in a frying pan, they're chayiv. It is chametz pater. So it's clearly a kasha on Reish Lakish, right? And Reish Lakish, because he was the one who said if it's made in a frying pan, that's the reason why those we mentioned earlier were pater. So to the Rabbi Shimon Lakish, it's a bam kasha on Rabbi Shimon Lakish. So Amrullah Amrilcha Rabbi Shimon Lakish. He says no. Over here, we're talking about a case where he first heated up the pan, and then he put the dough inside, and then it baked or fried, right? And that's there, and therefore you're chayiv. But in a case of no, and that's very similar to an oven where it's heated up, and then you put it in, right? And then it bakes, right? So therefore, that's the big case of chayiv. So it makes a difference in a frying pan. Is it heated up first, and then you attach the dough? Or do you attach the dough first, then heat it up? If you heat it up first and attach the dough, you're chayiv. If you attach the dough and then you heat it up, that's the case. Reish Lakish says you're pater. So aval hidvik l'v'sayf yirtiach mai. But if you go ahead and you put it in and then you heat it up, what do you say there? Hakinami the pater, the pturim. I says pater. So atani seifa. So why does it say in the seifa? Asan b'cham pturim. Why does it say if you make it in the sun, then you're pater? Go ahead and say in the Reisha. When do we say that you're chayiv in a case of frying pan? That's in a case of when you heat it up first and afterwards you go ahead and you put in the dough. But if you're doing the opposite order, you would first attach the dough and then you go ahead and heat it up, then you would be pater. So Gemara answers, you're right. So he says, so it says, yeah, you're right. Chasur mechzor, right? Really, it's missing a part. That's what you say. Over when you say that you're chayiv, and knows when you heat it up, and then afterwards you put it in. But if you go ahead and attach it first, put the dough inside, and then you go ahead and you heat up the frying pan, then then it's like that which you made in the sun, and therefore you be patur. Then you be patur from that from hafashas challah. Tashma, come and listen. Yotzin b'matzah heina u'b'matzah hasuya b'ilfus. Right. One is yotzin with the mitzvah matzah using matzah heina, which I'll soon explain what that is, and matzah that was made in a frying pan. So you see, made in a frying pan, it's considered to be yotzin, and therefore it's bread should be chayiv. So it's a kash in a frying pan. So Gemara answers, no, hakinami shertiach. It was heated up first. And then he went ahead and attached it. No different. This similar to making it in an oven. So my matzah heina. So what is matzah heina? If it's baked to the point of where if you pull it apart, you break it, and there's not strands, right, of basically like uncooked dough, right? You sometimes get that Friday night challah, right? That's not as not baked so well, right? And you pull it apart, it sort of gets stretchy. So that's not that. That's what we're talking about, right? So kosher, when you pull it apart and there is not that, you don't have that dough, then it's considered to be baked enough where you can be yaitz the mitzvah. And Amar Rava says, so too with the loaves, the 40 loaves that go with a carbon toda, also it has that requirement that it has to be baked to the point of where if you pull it apart, it's not stretchy. So Gemara says pshita, hachalechem ksiv, hachalechem ksiv. Both of them say lechem. So Gemara says no. Malzemo just said hoyev ksiv. Over there in case the Torah says v'hikriv mimenu. The pasuk says you go ahead and offer it. Top of the page. Echad mikol karban. So echad shelo yitil paro. So now it has to be one, and now is it basically that it can't go ahead and be broken, right? So b'hacha command the parsidam, and over here, if it's not right, if it's not stretched enough, right? So therefore, maybe you'd say that it has to be more fully baked, and therefore, even beyond this point, it still needs to be completely more, because then it's considered to be like a separated kamash malon. That is the same requirements of lachmi todo as we do by these breads. Fine. Meisve still asking kashas on this machlekes between making challah in a frying pan. So meisve hamiisa. Right. When it comes to meisa, we're going to explain what that is in a minute. Beis Shammai paitrin ubeis Hillel chayav. When it comes to meisa, Beis Shammai says pater. It says pater from challah. Ubeis Hillel says chayav. Hechlita. If it's made hechlita, we'll explain. Beis Shammai and bechayav ubeis Hillel paitrin. Opposite. Right. They flipped around the shitas. What is meisa? What is chalita? So ha'meisa kemach shal gabe hamuglashin, right? That is flour that is poured on boiling water, and hichlita. And the other case of hechlita, the second case, is muglashin, that boiling water, shal gabe kemach, that's poured on flour. So it just has to do the difference of which one goes in first. And that's the difference between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. We'll explain what the machlokes is. And Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yasi, Aimi Meshumavi, he says, no. Zev is the potter. Both of them are potter. The boiling water with flour, and the flour with the boiling water. Both these cases, that's not the normal way of challah, and therefore that is a potter. And some say Zev is chayiv, and some say both of them are chayiv. Both of them, asun beilfis potter. Doesn't make a difference if you do it in a frying pan. In other words, then it's potter. The toner, but it's done in an oven, then chayiv. So now, first of all, the question is: the Tanakama ma'ishna me'iso ma'ishna chalita. Why would it make a difference whether the flour is added on top of the boiling water or the boiling water is added on top of the flour? So Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel v'chein Amar Rabbi Yehuda v'yitem Rabbi Shua ben Levi k'machloikes bezu kach machloikes bezu. Beis Hillel is the same Beis Hillel in both cases. Either Beis Hillel, both cases say chayiv, or both cases Beis Hillel says pater, and same thing with Beis Shammai. In other words, they don't flip around the order depending on whether the flour goes on top of the other. In other words, v'tabra, right? And you're right? It's a kasha. So mish shanazu lo shanazu. In other words, what we're saying is, yes, it is considered, this is a stira, and it doesn't make sense. So obviously it doesn't make sense that in one case they would say chayv, the other case is pater, and the opposite would say pater, then chayv. That's a mistake. So either Beis Hillel, both cases say pater, or Beis Shammai says both cases pater. But each of them go the same both ways across, and therefore it is not considered a contradiction. Nevertheless, katani mihas. Nevertheless, let's look at the last case, right? We're talking about the case of using a frying pan for making bread, and whether one is chai for that. She asan beilfis pater. It says he made the frying pan as pater. So I tutored Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan earlier on Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yochanan said that if I can find Rabbi Yochanan, right? Rabbi Yochanan said that where was it? Machlekes, right? So Rabbi Yochanan said that how come I can't find it? Right, it was can't find it. Right, so Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that a case of making a frying pan, one would be chayiv. It's a regular case, right? One would still be chayiv. So over here it says shasam bilfas pater. So I to Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan really it's a machlekes tonight. The Tanya in the Bryce, you might think the meisa and the chaluta, basically pouring the flour on the boiling water on the flour. One is chayv chala. Tamaloymar lechem. Therefore, it says lechem, not that type of bread that's made in that way. Regular, the normal way you make bread. And Rabbi Yehuda Aimer and lechem ela ha'afoi b'tanur. And Rabbi Yehuda says that no, bread is only something which is baked in a tanur. Right, but anything else, i.e., a frying pan, one would be pater according to Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda, Hainu Tanakama, isn't Rabbi Yehuda the Tanakama? He says makes an oven. The other one says it has to be made it has to be made like normal bread. So what's the difference between making like normal bread and making badafka in an oven? So elolav myself as maybe you can say the frying pan is an afkamina. Tanakama said myself as chayav, and Tanakama held that still called lechem, and therefore one would be chayav v'chala. The sabr myself as pater. Rabbi Yehuda would say no, myself as you go ahead and make it in a frying pan, then you would be pater. So it's machlokes tanaim. Rabbi Yochanan says don't ask on me. So Gemara says no. Really, the kuli alma myself as pater. Really, everyone holds in a frying pan. It's pater, and therefore it's a kasha in Rabbi Yochanan. Over here, the arguing is if you just make it a frying pan, then everyone says you're pater. Question is, you do it in a frying pan, and then you go ahead and you bake it more in an oven. The Tanakama saver came in the shechaz or lechem karina beit. The Tanakama held that once you go ahead and you put it in an oven, now it's called lechem, and therefore it's considered to be chayiv and chala. It's like lechem. Rabbi Yehuda saver ein lechem ela ha'afui b'tana mikara, only something that is initially baked in an oven. The came the mikara lav b'tana, I feel lav lechem. Since that wasn't baked in an oven, then it's not considered to be real bread. And Amar Ravan says, Rava, my time with the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason calling Rabbi Yehuda, who says the only way to bake it is to bake it once in an oven? So the pasuk says, pasuk in Vayikra. It says over there, V'yafu eser nashim lachem b'tanur echad. And 10 women, right, will bake their breads in one tanur. Lechem b'tanur echad kari lechem. Only bread that's baked once in an oven is called bread. She'enafu b'tanur echad ein kari lechem. It's not baked in one single oven, i.e., it's baked in a frying pan and then goes in an oven. That is not called lechem. Fine. Yosef, Rabba, Rabbi Yosef, Achure, Rabbi Zera. So one time, Rabba and Rabbi Yosef were sitting behind Rabbi Zera. The Yosef, Rabbi Zera, coming to Ula, and Rabbi Zera was sitting over there in front of Ula. So Amarle, Rabba, Rabbi Zera. So Rabba said to Rabbi Zera, "Boy, my name is Ula." Since he was close to Ula, he says, "Do me a favor, go ahead and ask Ula a shiloh for me or for us, for me and Rabbi Yosef." So Hidvik mi b'fnim v'rtiach mi b'chutz mahu. You go ahead and you put dough inside a frying pan. Right, and then you put it, and you put the fire underneath it, right? Summer late. So he says, so Reb Zera says, before I ask Ula, so my imilay, what am I going to ask him? Right? He's going to ask me, what's my question? Di aminale. So if I ask him that, right? Amarli, hi niu maisa ilfus. This is exactly a case of maisa ilfus. This is a case of frying, right? You put dough inside and then you fry it. So he said, if you put dough and then you fry it, that's considered to be pater. So Amarle Rav Yosef, Rav Zera. So Rav Yosef said, no, forget what my friend Rabbi said. Ask like this. Right? Go ahead and you put the dough in, and then you put the fire, right? The fire goes on top. So mahu. So Amarle. So what am I going to say? If I ask that question, right? This is the way that most people make. I guess most people fry bread in this case, and therefore this would also be the same thing. This would be no different than any other case of frying. It's not considered to be similar to an oven. Rather, this is the case of most people frying. So therefore, your kashas are not really kashas. This would be the machlokes of, I guess, making bread in a frying pan, according to Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. All right, we'll stop here at the bottom. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we'll pick up from here. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys later. Mazel tov to Josh. Simchas Bayal.
Amen. Thank you.